Hi guys. So it's a wee bit weird this morning not going to Sunday school, and I missed you all, have to be honest. Um, so this afternoon I was out on a wee walk, just on my own, and I was thinking that would be really good to keep in touch with you all, even though we can't see each other, and have some little videos of maybe some of the stuff that we would do at Sunday school. But obviously you can't answer my questions, and if I shout out the letter A, you can't tell me the Bible verse for that. So we'll have to maybe think of some creative things that we can do, but I'll talk to your mums and dads about that this week. But I was thinking, like, this week has just been really, really strange. I'm not sure what it's been like for you. Maybe you're a wee bit worried, or maybe you're a bit afraid because of all of the changes that have happened, or maybe you're thinking, great, a really long school holiday. But it's all been very, very strange. And so I was thinking how you must all be feeling about that, because I know that I find it a wee bit scary. And you're thinking, do the government even know, like, should we be doing what they say, all those people in charge? But the Bible tells us really clearly that we have a responsibility. Some of you maybe not know what that word means, but we should be doing what the government tell us to do. And the Bible tells us that in the book of Romans, chapter 13, verse 1, and I have it printed out for you, but it's going to be back to front, obviously. But it says, everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. And so really what that verse means is that when it says to submit, that means that we have to pretty much do as they say. That's what that big word means. And governing authorities, that's like Boris Johnson when you see him on TV, or Arlene Foster when you see her on TV giving us rules and suggestions that we should be doing. And God's saying that all of those people that are in power, He's put them in power, and we should respect them and we should obey them, because God has put them there, and ultimately we are to obey God. So if we're going to obey God, we have to obey those people that God has put in power over us. Even though that might be really hard and it might be really difficult to understand, it's what God has told us that we should do. So this week coming in, when you're not going to school, or you can't go to see your friends, or maybe you can't even go see your granny and granda, or your cousins, or your aunties and uncles, remember that God has said that we have to obey those people that are in power over us, because He has put them there, and by obeying them, we're ultimately obeying Him. And you know, God has even given us a few examples of people in the Bible who obeyed whenever things were really, really tough. And one of those people was a man called Noah. And you maybe remember that we learnt about Noah in Sunday school. And you probably all know the story anyway. But God spoke to Noah and asked him to do something that was really, really strange, because it had never rained before. But God was asking Noah to build a boat, because He was going to send a flood to destroy the earth. And Noah had no idea what any of this meant, but Noah knew that he had to obey God, and that was what God wanted him to do. So he had to go and get all the materials, and he had to build a boat like God had told him to do. And then God sent the rain once Noah and his family were in this boat. And there was only Noah and his family, his 3 sons and their wives and his wife, and the animals on this boat. And they were there for a really long time, just on their own. But they knew that they had to obey God, and they had to do this, and that God was going to look after them, and that God was going to take care of them. And we know that God kept His promise, and that Noah and his family all came off the boat. Sorry, the picture's not really in view. It's also back to front, but I'm trying my best here. Noah and his family were brought safely off the boat, and the animals as well. And God showed them a sign, which was a rainbow that He put up in the sky. And that was how God showed them that He had kept His promise. And so this week, and maybe over the next few weeks, maybe longer, we don't know, you're going to be asked to stay inside with just your family, and not go out and play in the streets with your friends. You can't go to the park. And you go, why have I to do that? But you remember that God has said that we have to obey those people that are in authority over us. Just like Noah knew that he had to do this hard thing and build a boat and live on this boat for a long time with nobody else, and it was a hard thing for him to do, and he was probably confused by it all. He knew that he had to obey God. So even though the stuff that the government are asking us to do is hard, we know that we have to obey them because God has said we have to. There was another man in the Bible who also was given a really hard thing to do. And this man had been given a promise by God that God was going to make his family into a great nation. But this man was really old and he had no kids at all. So how was this promise going to come true? But he believed that God would keep his promises. And of course this man was called Abraham. And eventually him and his wife Sarah had a little baby boy called Isaac. And God had kept his promise. But one day God asked Abraham to do a really, really hard thing. And God asked Abraham to take his son, when he was about 13 years of age, up to the top of the mountain and to offer him as a sacrifice, where he was going to have to end his son's life and offer him as a sacrifice. And Abraham didn't question it. Abraham didn't think twice about it, because Abraham knew that he had to obey God. And even though this was a really hard thing for him to do, Abraham obeyed, because God had kept his promises to him. And Abraham believed that somewhere in all of this, God had a plan and a reason for why he was asking him to do it. But we know the end of that story, and we know that God provided another sacrifice instead of Isaac. Whenever they were on the top of the mountain, God showed Abraham that there was an animal, a ram in the hedge, and he took that animal and sacrificed it instead. But Abraham knew that he had to obey God, even though it was really, really difficult and he didn't understand. And we can learn so much from what Noah and Abraham did. Ultimately, the thing that we need to know is that we have to obey God. And in the circumstances and in the strange times we're living in over the next wee while, the way that we can obey God is by obeying those people that God has put in authority and power over us, the government, even though that's hard. And we know that God has given us this rule, and it's for our good. But we know that God always keeps his promises, and that God is always there with us. And if we were at Sunday school this week, we'd be moving on to the next letter of the alphabet, which is the letter N. And I know that if you were all there with me and I shouted out the letter M, you would all be able to tell me what last week's was. But we're moving on to another verse this week. And I still want to give you your points, because we all know that you love your points. And don't forget that Katie Laird is beating you all, boys. Zach is coming third, can't remember who's second, but Katie Laird is beating all the rest of you. So I would like to give you the chance to get more points. Now obviously you can't shout out the verse to me today, so I'm going to give you a challenge, and I want you to try and get a video of yourselves doing this verse in the strangest place in your house or your garden. And if you can get your parents involved in it, we'll maybe give you more points. If you can get your brothers or sisters involved in it, we'll maybe give you more points. But the most creative one is going to get extra points, which is all going to go towards your prizes, which will hopefully get to you towards the end of the Sunday school year, what would be the Sunday school year. So our new verse, which is obviously going to come up maybe back to front, but it is found in the book of Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5, and it says, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." And this is God speaking to us in this verse, and God is saying that he's never ever ever going to leave us on our own, and that he's never ever going to forsake us. And what that word forsake means is forget us. So God is saying that never is he going to leave us, and never is he going to forsake us or forget about us. So even though this week you might think it's all a bit funny and strange what's happening around you, you remember that God has said that he's always there with you, and he's always there beside you, and he's never going to forget about you. And don't forget your challenge. And know this week that I'm praying for you, as is Christina and Susan and G. And we're praying that even at home, in the middle of all the hard, scary things, maybe you're worried about things, that you will obey God, and that you will remember to obey those people that God has put in authority over you. And the other thing that I really, really want to encourage you all to do is that you're probably going to be spending a lot more time with your brothers and sisters because you're not going to be at school. So please don't fight with them. Please give mum and dad an easy time, or maybe it's granny and granda that's there. Whoever's there in the house with you, please remember, try not to fight with each other. And try and be nice to your mum and dad, because they're only trying to help you as well. Don't be cheeky to them or any of those things. All those stuff that we've learned about in the commandments at Sunday school. Please do all those things. And don't forget your challenge. And I'm hoping to get some videos from your parents of you doing your challenge this week, to get your points. And I'm going to send your parents through the link to a new song as well. And if anybody's feeling like they want some extra points and they could get a video of them singing the song and maybe making up some actions to it, we'll get you some extra points for that too. But please look after yourselves this week. Be good, and remember that God has called us to obey Him if we love Him and know Him, and that the way we can show our obedience to Him is by obeying the government and all of those rules that they're telling us that we have to follow. So be good and take care.